Well, hello gardeners, welcome to my backyard. Today we are gonna do an in-depth garden tour of my backyard space. I think it's gonna allow you to choose a lot of different species and varieties throughout our Florida tropical gardens. So for those of you guys who are new to this channel, my name is Jennifer Bevins. I am a landscape designer here in Vero Beach, Florida, Zone 10A. We service along the Treasure and Space Coast, and we also do designs throughout the state of Florida and virtual consults. So check us out if this is the kind of style you're looking for. But for now, let's just talk about plants and trees, because I am a landscape designer and have been for a long time, but I'm a gardener first. I love working in my garden. I love creating new feels and new spaces. However, I'm not the biggest fan of maintenance. So you're gonna notice in my particular garden, I designed it to help me minimize the amount of maintenance involved with Florida gardens. I'll kind of explain why as we go into certain plants and trees and what they offer in the gardens. I'm gonna get Bryce to kind of turn around and you guys will see my neighbor's backyard where they've kind of allowed it just to be a full backyard with very little landscaping. They've just kept more open space. We're on about 1/4 of an acre. Now they actually have more backyard space than we have. So we have pretty much about right off the foundation of our house line. We've got a 12-foot patio that runs along the length of my house. Then we've got this little 9 to 10-foot walkway space, which is pretty much a drainage easement here right through the middle. And this has become our walkway area because we just could not get grass to grow. And then we took the remainder of the property line, which is about 16 to 18 foot deep, and it goes up at kind of a slant like you saw my neighbors did, and we've created a layered backyard landscape. All right, so we're here at the edge of my property line. I pretty much landscape from one end of the property line to the other. This is my finishing point. Right on the other side of this hedge here is my neighbor's property. So we wanted to make sure that we started with something that was an aggressive grower, something that was a good dense grower, kind of a sound barrier, a tall plant that we could work with. So we have the Lucie hedge that runs the length from the corner of this drainage easement all the way up to the edge of my rear property line back there. I have a love affair with this plant because of its durability, its versatility, and just overall toughness of Florida environment. So it is a fantastic plant to use. Can be a little cold sensitive in the northern areas of Florida. So anything I would say above Satellite Beach, I'd probably steer away from it. A little too burnt, too aggressive. However, they are such an aggressive grower that, you know, if you do get some burn back, you trim it and then let it flush back out. So it is just such a great grower. They do like proper drainage, so you want to make sure you plant them a little bit high if they're going to be in a low area. You'll notice that because my landscaping really likes a lot of water, I have it set on that slope and everything drains straight down. So it really works really well as the water drains all this way and this way. So that's a great environment for it. If you're on flatland, just plant the Lucie a tad bit high to make sure that water doesn't sit on those roots. There are roof lines and houses pretty much everywhere. We are in a typical suburban neighborhood with houses on the side, roof lines to the back, big community, and a big clubhouse area over in that rear side. So this is something that I knew I wanted to make sure that became very private over time, and it really has. I really feel like we are nice and secluded and tucked into this space, which was the goal, you guys. Now this was kind of a little makeshift. This is a drainage easement. I still wanted coverage here. I feel like I'm getting coverage from everywhere from all my neighbors. I couldn't plant right in the center of this drainage easement because in terrible storms, this area right here will fill up with water. So what I tried to do was take plants or trees that are going to kind of grow up and out and over top of this area. So these guys are going to search for the sun. These are plumeria. These are pink, yellow, and white blooms on the plumeria. Unfortunately, nobody's blooming today, but these giant leaves offer kind of just that bit of concealment, that bit of tropical thickness or fullness in what would naturally be a very open area. So if you guys have a similar situation and you're trying to get something to branch over into that area, a great branching plant is plumeria. They'll do a fantastic job of following the sun. So they'll come in this way, cross each other, really find little interesting grapeviney trunks. I'm hoping in time, as these guys get bigger and come over here, I'll hang different types of bird houses or bird feeders or something underneath of those trunks, utilizing that kind of cool look and then kind of also filling this space as these guys get tall. The next tree that I chose that I planted kind of at an angle is this double bottle palm. Now I planted him, he was very young and small when I put him in. He's really starting to take off and grow in our Florida summer this year, but it is going to naturally come over and completely conceal this corner. So this frond that's here, when it's full grown, is going to be 14 foot wide, and they're going to come out just like this and fill this whole space. No opening here between this guy and the neighboring plantings next to us. This is going to be a very full ending to my landscape, and that's what I wanted. All the way around concealment, but I had to deal with a drainage easement that wouldn't allow me to have plantings all the way through. So this is the best I could do with that spot. We have a flagstone walkway that leads through the drainage easement. This is fairly new. I am in love with it. Creating little walkway space, little open areas that lead out to an area that you can drop some debris behind your planting is go-to. I have them in several areas of my gardens. That's an easy way to maintain your garden because there's always going to be that in Florida. Sometimes it's just as easy as walking through your garden for 5 or 6 minutes and clip something that's just a little unsightly and stick it back there, or grab a frond that's kind of fallen and put it back there. And voila, you're not working in the garden. You're not distracted. You're back up there having that cup of coffee or that glass of wine and spending more time up there than in your garden. The showstopper right here, that's the only one that's in bloom right now, is the pagoda. The pagoda is a beautiful summertime bloomer with that orange flame. Oh my goodness. I just cannot think of a plant that really shows off more than this plant and blooms so often. Sometimes I get blooms even in the winter. So you do have to really stick with the maintenance on this. When I talked about some of the plants in my garden being low maintenance, I would say a good 90% of them are. This gal is not. She does need to be cut in the winter. She can get a little bit thin, not as attractive, but all summer long she blooms. She has these big giant leaves and it just has an interesting look. But what she does do is she invites her friends and her family and, you know, and offers little pop-ups of new pagodas everywhere. If you like this plant, make sure that you really like it and you leave a spot out for her invite her friends, because that's exactly what will happen. The good thing about it is it's very easy to pop up and propagate if you want to move it or gift it to a neighbor or a friend or a family. So I do that about twice a year where I'll select the ones that I don't want and pop them up and get rid of them. To the back of her, these guys are not right now in bloom, but this beautiful collection of my buffer here is the Brazilian red cloaks. Oh my goodness. Same big giant leaf, does not spread like the pagoda does or offer little runners or pups that go everywhere. It is a plant that absolutely loves to connect together, becomes a solid wall, and really just does a gorgeous job of becoming a red showstopper when it's in bloom. It does bloom most summers. It does bloom in filtered light, full sun. It can get a little thirsty, so if you guys are going to put it in full sun, make sure that you have an irrigation head nearby that does spray and hit all of the roots of these guys, because they can get a little bit thirsty in that heat, but they will bloom more in the full sun, so it's definitely worth having a little extra water. This area is more shady, but it does bloom pretty often here as well. Down below, I've had these guys for ages. This is the gold dust croton, one of my favorite crotons to use. Beautiful leaflet coloring variegation in here. Just a nice, compact, chunky little collection. I love to pair these with a dark green. So if you have something like this and then you have something dark green behind it, it's just such a gorgeous combination. I think that they work really, really well together. So it's just a collection of 3 of those. I brought them in at 7-gallon size, and then I have one anchoring the other side of the walkway. And just what a nice little grouping of croton that can handle filtered light. Now, this croton variety, you can tell right here, this particular one over on this side and that middle get more sun than the other crotons. You can see the difference of what you're going to get in a full sun environment. This is what the leaf coloring is going to look like for this particular gold dust croton. And then in the shade, leaflet coloring is going to look like in the same variety of croton. And I don't know, you pick, but I think they're both very pretty. Now, this down here is a landscaper mistake. So even doing this is for as long as I'm doing this, I still make my mistakes. This little area, I thought I had enough shade coverage between this grouping here and thinking that this bottle palm was going to get big enough to shade this little collection of ground orchids. Trying it, I'm giving a little bit more time, but you can see the sunburn on these guys. These bloom a beautiful pink flower. Believe it or not, I have some that get afternoon sun, but they only get it for about 2 hours, and they're doing beautifully. They're blooming more, they're very happy. It's such a balance of where to place your plants that it really matters. So over here, I have a large areca palm. Now I have trimmed and trimmed on her. She's got multiple stalks. She's recently been trimmed, so she's a little bit more narrow than she normally is. Normally I let her become nice and full and thick, so that way I can't really see to the back of her. This tree for the longest time, literally for 10 years, has been my blockage from the house directly behind me, from the pool screen directly behind me. This tree was a tree that blocked it all. So now that the other trees have grown in and the Lucie have grown in, I've cut this tree back because I don't necessarily need that much density in this spot. And I wanted to see a little bit more to the back side of it. So, you know, it's amazing how landscapes can do that. They really can solve a problem right off the bat for 4 or 5, 6 years. And then as your other landscapes caught up, then now you might not need that for that. So you can address and adjust based on what your needs are. I hear people say, well, I don't want a tree that's going to get too tall and out of sight. Well, I get that, but they need immediate coverage. Sometimes it's good to go with something like that that grows fast, that's going to give you almost immediate coverage, and then plant on the next phase of your landscaping to catch up with that. So when that tree does become too large, you know, maybe 10 years later, then it might be time to either remove the tree or cut it back so the tree is no longer the focal point, but all the landscaping around it has grown in and kind of taken over the job. It's like they've stepped into the shadow of that tree and now become the focal point themselves. So I think that that's great. So think of your landscaping as an evolving situation, because that's what gardens do. That's why gardens become such a big part of us. They take on a life of their own, and you find yourself walking through them. I don't know, maybe I'm crazy. Maybe I'm the only one that does that, but you find yourself walking through them going, oh, hello, look at you. You're blooming. Look at you. You're happy. Look at you. You're not. What's going on? That's why gardens are so pleasant. So right here we have a Malayan coconut palm. Now they're more in the dwarf varieties of coconut palms. They have a nice chunky trunk. It takes them a while to really get some good size to them. They still produce coconuts like crazy. This guy has been in the ground for 10 years, so really established. But I hear all the time where people put a coconut palm in at 6 foot tall, and then 2 years later it's 20 foot tall. It's not usually the case, but with Malayans, it's really not the case. Malayans grow slower. They're more of a compact canopy to them. They have a little bit of a chunkier base, and they just take a little bit more time to get to that size. So if you want something that sticks around the garden a little bit longer, your Malayans are the way to go. To the back is a spindle palm that is struggling because it's not getting tons of light. To the right over there is another Malayan. You guys know the queen of my heart is the Queen Emma. This is the perfect environment for a Queen Emma. If you guys have a Queen Emma and you have a little protection from whatever tree, it could be an oak tree, it could be any kind of hardwood tree, it could be a palm tree. They love a little bit of filtered light where their leaves are getting sunlight through them, but they're not getting the harsh direct rays. When that happens, they get this beautiful purple tones to the leaves. So you get this gorgeous, all the new growth has more purple in it, and then you have that striking green to the center. And then of course, this beautiful fragrant bloom that they offer is such a stunner. That bloom will last for a good month. Sometimes I'll get multiple ones at a time. It seems like it's always blooming all summer long. They start early spring and bloom all summer. I even had a couple this winter. So as long as they're happy, I find that they bloom pretty much. They show their appreciation by blooming, and I appreciate their appreciation. So I think it's great. Down below are my Sanchezia. I love, love, love Sanchezia. They're a soft plant. They do need some filtered protection. They can handle full sun, but they will bleach out a little bit, and they will need a little extra water if you're going to plan on putting them in the full sun. But some filtered light like we have here, they do great. Now along this edge gets more sun than inside, and the leaf color will change. They'll be a little bit brighter on the edges where you get sun, where you get more shade. There'll be a little bit more of that darker, and the yellow will go almost white versus yellow. But the reason why I have them here is because the Queen Emma is gorgeous as it pops up like out of a birthday cake here, but the bottom stalk, it's something that I like to hide. So I usually, when I have a tree like that, I'll put a skirt planting, something chunky and full and lower and compact that will really fill up the base of this planting. So that way you go from a sea of these to that upright look of this guy popping out of the middle of it. And that's what these are great for. I could have continued on with the sloppy painters. Those would have worked, or a different Croton variety. Those would have worked too. But what I do like about Sanchezia is they stay chunky, they stay full. See, they kind of move like this. They'll move in the wind, and that's what I love about them. They're just not a harsh hedge in any sort of the way. That also means if you only have 2 of these guys, there's not a lot of support system for them. They do like to be planted in a drift like this. They really, really will connect together, become just a little sturdier. They just do so well like that. But I love the way they look. I love their tender, soft, big, giant leaf. And I think that they're just so tropical. I will put them and let them just kind of fall over top of my Buta edging. I'm not a big fan of big, heavy edge lines. So I love the Buta edging for what it does. It's definitely a fantastic product. That composite edging, I know it's here to stay, but I also like it interrupted a little bit. I like more of that natural look. You'll see all the way through my walkway space, I've done the same thing where I've taken spots where you can distinctively see the edging. It's nice and clean line, and then I'll blur it a little bit with the plants, letting them overhang like my burl marks or my Sanchezia or whatnot as we walk through the garden, because I like that organic mix. On this side of the garden here, I have a gardenia tree. Of course, she's done her blooming cycles during Mother's Day, but she's still got some green on her. I only plant gardenia trees when I know the soil is really good. Their pH levels are a little bit finicky here in Florida. She's happy here, and she is right on this corner. And when she's in bloom, it's like, ooh, it just smells so good out here. It's a perfect fragrance to have near a seeding section. So if you're gonna try one, put them near anywhere there's a seeding section. If you can't control the pH, or you know you struggle with good soil in your area, get a nice big low belly pot, something that's kind of really wide and chunky. It doesn't have to be deep. They're not deep rooters, but nice and broad and wide, like a big bowl. Put that girl in there, and then make sure that she's got really good soil for a gardenia, and then you're gonna have a fantastic blooming tree that's gonna be near your seeding section that you get to really enjoy. I have another pathway that leads as like a little maintenance pathway, and then I have a little Laquala palm. That Laquala palm I have been babying for years. They are slow growers. They do like shade. She kind of can be a bit of a diva. They can't handle anything below 32 degrees. They will really be upset with you if that's the case. So you want to cover them or put them in a pot in the garden and bring them in during your cold snaps. We've gone a little bit below 32. I've not had to cover because of all the exterior foliage that I have. This microclimate has done its own job of really creating kind of a cove for my landscaping. I get very, very little, if any, lost from freezes here because of that. Because they do have these giant paddle leaves, they don't like a lot of wind. So if you've got a courtyard or a walled area or a side yard where there's some additional palm trees that are netted real close, I'll get Bryce to pop in a picture of the Laquala palm that we have further down. That's kind of in a cove area of palms, and it is grown twice as fast. The fronds are bigger. They don't have so many rips in them. It's just a happier tree. So these guys are fantastic to work with, but when they're in a really good setting, they're the showstoppers. They're the things that count. So make sure that when you're picking out this tree, it's not just going somewhere in the garden, it's going in the perfect spot in the garden, because that is exactly where they need to go. Right here, I have the Silver Bay Aglaonemas. Oh my gosh, some people call them Diamond Frost. People call them the Chinese plant. They're just a fantastic low light plant grouping. Excellent to work with. Then we get a little bit of sun in the afternoon, and I've got pentas here. These are the pink pentas. These guys only need 3 hours of sun to bloom, and they bloom like crazy in this little spot because they get this angled, and then later in the day they get this corner area here. So this is a spot where I had a ground orchid that kept burning and burning and burning. But these guys were okay because they were protected here. So I needed something with some color here. That's what's great about gardening, is you really do get to play with your spots. It could be something a foot from another plant. It requires a whole different look because of the amount of sun that it's getting. So this is a pop of color right here just for that spot. All the way through here, all this craziness that you see here is creeping fig. If you guys are trying to naturalize some rocks or an old wall, or even make a green wall space, creeping fig is perfect for that because it will stick to hard surface and climb its way up. I've got a mix of bromeliads here. I've got some Johannes bromeliads here, a little Don Juan bromeliad down there, a little red hots along through here. And here is a ground orchid that is in the shade underneath this Laquala's big fronds here, and it's in bloom. I have a foxtail agave just kind of popping out there. If you guys have some boulders, use foxtail agaves. They have a little trunk to them as they get older, and they'll fold over top of boulders and really kind of give you that interactive look, like they're just coming out to say hello. Very, very interesting. And they also, once they get that trunk to them, they offer pups. It takes a while. They don't pop out babies fast, but once they do get that trunk to them, now they start popping out other babies, and you can literally peel those babies off and start popping them in between other boulders and really decorating with those guys. They are the perfect slow growing agave. Thornless, very easy to work with, and can handle more water than most agaves, can handle sun and can handle shade. They're definitely a go-to plant for me. The backdrop that I have along my water feature there, those are all cat palms. Now cat palms mature out to around 9 foot tall, so they're super slow growers, but they really, I mean, those guys have been in there for 10 plus years. They're starting to get some age on them, but they're definitely a nice, beautiful, dense wall. And then all the way to the back, I have a Colucia hedge that's on the top of the berm. That's the builder's Colucia hedge for the other neighboring development. My favorite palm tree in my whole backyard space, the Carpoxylon palms. They're dynamic, they're stately, they're gorgeous. They are super slow growers, so much so apparently I forget about them in the yard. But their crown shaft is absolutely a stunner. I hope you guys can see that on camera. But if you're looking for one of those palms, maybe an entrance palm on either side of a walkway or a corner of a house or a feature palm somewhere, they're a bit pricey, I will tell you, but they are worth their weight in gold because they're just so beautiful. And then as they mature, even more beautiful. I brought these guys in around 9 to 10 foot tall. They've been in the ground for, I would say, about 8 or 9 years, and they're really, really just taking off. And I would say it's the last 2 years they've really shown off what they can do. Initially, they're more compact because they're not one of your fast-growing wild palms. They're more controlled. The canopies are more tight. They're very vertical, and then they just do a slight bend at the edge of the leaf, like a curtsy. So I just think they're just such dolls in the garden. So I have 2 of them here and 1 at the rear corner of my garden. I know that this is not to everyone's taste. I like a jungle-inspired garden. I really like that wild thing, you know, plant on plant. I do like a collection of plants, not 1 of these and 2 of these, or, you know, I do like a little bit more dense planting, but I do know that this part might just be a little bit too wild for most. But this is my jam, and this is why I wanted to share it with you. This is my personal garden. I've got some sloppy painters mixed into the back there because sloppy painters need no light. If you guys have a no light situation, but you need a little bright spot in the garden, pick a sloppy painter. There's no light back there, and those guys pop around the corner and really spit out with some beautiful bright yellow coloring. Right down below, I have a row of aglaonemas, the silver bays to match these here. Well, the elephant ears are not supposed to be there. I planted them initially before I put the aglaonemas in there, and then I was trying out to see if I could put aglaonemas in more of a shade environment with no light. So that was a test trial, and they're doing perfectly fine, but I cannot get rid of the dwarf alocasia. So that is a disclaimer when it comes to dwarf alocasia. You can put it somewhere and then decide to take it out later, and it's gonna come back. So they have little bulbs under the ground. They'll pop back up over time, and you'll have to kind of relocate them. What is great about that particular plant, if it happens to pop up again, you can literally cut it off right at the trunk base and put it anywhere else in your garden, and it'll reroot and grow in. You can put it in a fountain of water in the center, and then it'll live perfectly that way as well. It'll live in so many different environments. It's fantastic. It does like filtered light, so it's going to need some protection from the harshest days of the sun. Can handle all morning sun though, and it's just a fabulous plant to work with, and unless you're trying to get rid of it permanently in a spot, because that doesn't go so well, as you can probably see. I put elephant ears in this area. Sometimes I'll fill up this whole corner and this whole corner with elephant ears and let them live in the water. And to me, that's so much fun. Just when I pop out pups, I just place them everywhere. So very, very easy to work with. The great thing about having a water feature like this in the garden, all the plants in this environment love that humidity, that constant feed of water that's in this particular area. So if you have a water feature, put some hanging orchids near it. Really let and unfold your plants around it. Nestle that water feature because they're going to love where they live. This water feature circulates over time, so it pockets this water here for a short period of time. There is a big giant basin underneath here that holds 500 gallons of water that recirculates, goes back up the pipe and out. So this is not a sitting water situation. It's always moving, goes down into the basin, back up the pipe. So we don't have to worry about mosquitoes or any kind of problems. One of those features that really give you that great bit of sound in the garden, especially if you're needing a little bit more sound from a very busy neighborhood like we have. Right here, we've anchored a triple spindle palm. Happy, happy, happy here. It is really unfolding. I was hoping that it would really go all the way over the water feature on that side with that trunk. Not quite there yet. They mature out to around 14 to 16 foot. So they kind of overall stay a smaller palm tree. That's why I wanted it so close. I always kind of wanted a tree right here in this particular spot to really give me some dense coverage from the seeding section. And this girl is doing it. She provides great shade for this collection of plants. I have a calathea there that has been in about 5 different locations. Still not loving this location. You can see the little bit of burn on her. It's a hit or miss with that plant. Why I only have one left. A collection of Rojo Congos behind her though, who have been key plants in my garden. I will put a Rojo Congo anywhere I can. They're absolutely stunning. If you put them in the garden, put them in a collection. They really work well as a group, leaf on leaf kind of planting. They don't bloom, but they have a gorgeous red stem to them that really just kind of adds that architectural detail. It's like, ooh, what's going on over there? It's very exotic. I love the way they look. So if you have a spot, you have a dark spot in your garden, having a nice big grouping of 7 or 8 of those Rojo Congos with maybe some sloppy painters to the back, with maybe a beautiful bit of Sanchezia to the front of those, voila, you have a very layered tropical garden, and they just all play so well together. Right here, I have a giant's bird's nest fern. And it was so little when I put him in, but look how big he's gotten. He's really become such a stunner, so much so that he's kind of attaching to the trunk of this tree. And I'm wondering how, as this tree grows, will he become, you know, up here as this tree gets to be 14 foot. That's going to be an exciting thing to see. I have a Rojo Congo that has done that, and I just think that that's just such a cool thing. As the tree has grown, so is the plant grown up it. So bird's nest ferns are epiphytes, so they can absolutely grow on tree trunks or pretty much on anything. You can attach them in wall settings and they will root in and grow there. They're competing a little bit, but I really think they have a happy marriage because they're kind of really growing in together. Right down below here, this is a collection of those foxtail agaves, little pups that I've taken from my bigger versions of the other foxtail agaves. And you can really see just how when you bunch them up together, what a cool little grouping they meet. It's like a big succulent grouping. Right here is a flame agave. I have one in the front yard. I'll get Bryce to pop up a picture of it. It's gorgeous and big, absolutely stunners. Now the only negative with the flame agave is that it does have the thorns at the end. And you can clip these guys. You can clip those thorns right off. You see I've done that on some of the older ones, but the newer ones will always come up with thorns, where these guys are super soft. This has a little bit of a silver tone to it, where these guys have more of a lime chartreuse green to them. So a nice contrast with each other. Same with the Imperialis bromeliad. Now this guy is getting baked. Gorgeous and beautiful most of the year, but July and August, those are the months of the year that is just not super happy in the garden because we get that intense heat. I don't know if you guys can feel or see the radiated heat coming off of me right now, but it's like 150 degrees out here. It's crazy hot. You might have to sacrifice a month or two, but after that, they'll pop back and be their beautiful selves the rest of the year. So it might be worth it to you. So as we get further and deeper into this section here, this is going to be more of a shade garden along this back side, and then more of a little bit more sun as we get to the middle section. Now, I like to think of my backyard garden, because it is a flat space, I separated things like I'd like to see them. So over there, that is a big flat front face of the garden as I'm sitting in my seating section, as my family and us are enjoying our dining over there. That area is more of like, you can kind of see everything all at once in that particular spot. And then of course, around the water feature, that's its own kind of garden. That's its wild. That's like the jungle just kind of came in and went a little crazy around the water feature. Now this area is where I wanted that whole botanical garden vibe to come in. I wanted, as I walked through, it was more interactive. Like I saw a lot of different layers in here, sun and shade material, and that's kind of what I wanted to see in this particular spot. Back here, we have some very old cat palms. These guys were probably one of the first things that I planted back here after my areca palms and coconut palms. Now, when you guys want to do a garden that is somewhat shaded, but you are on the east side of the property and it gets pretty decent sun over here. In order to create that kind of microclimate, you're going to have to create different layers of canopy trees to offer that kind of shade and protection. So it's almost like you're bringing in the umbrellas to really protect your new plantings from the harshness of the sun. So everything on the inside of this berm area is going to be more of a dense shade planting. That's what is allowed to go into there. And so that's kind of what we have. So we have cat palms in this area to kind of give us a leaf on leaf kind of jungle vibe back there. And then I have aglionemas, the silver bays right here, a little collection of quarter lines. These are the shade variety of quarter lines. There's an exotica here, a Marie there, and exotica to the back. It was probably a little bit hard to see there. These right here, I've got 3 dwarf ferns. I believe they're called silver ladies. They're kind of a test trial, but I love their upright look. They kind of have that Dayun palm look where they're very vertical. They're very slow growing, grow into that 3 to 4 foot range, so I don't have to worry about them getting bigger. I have them planted up and out this way. That's why there's a gap here, because I kind of want them to fall forward. So when I'm looking at them from my seating section, I'm not looking at them like this, I'm looking at them like this. And I think they're going to do a great job of framing this tree here, which is an Australian tree fern. Hopefully he'll get, into that 9, 10, 12 foot range in this area. And as he does, this tree will be a couple foot taller, and then he'll fill in this back with this beautiful fern canopy. I'll ask Bryce to pop in a picture of what those guys look like when they're matured, but what a stunner. If I can have this kind of chartreuse green fern coming out this way, what a gorgeous look that's gonna be. So this is what I was talking about earlier, as how when you're planning your garden, as your other things grow up, think about what's next. What's next in the garden? This is my what's next. I use these guys as the ground cover to the jungle. They're the perfect bedding. They're the perfect weed suppressant. Their leaves are so big that they can seal the ground. I don't have to worry about anything seeing mulch down below other than this little spot that I've left open for the ferns to grow in. See, future planning. But everywhere else, I can fill them in bird's nest ferns and congos for that same reason. These are my Alice in Wonderland plants. These are my elephant ears, or AKA farfugiums. They're just gorgeous, bringing paddle leaf. They do bloom a lot in the spring, this big yellow shoot with beautiful yellow flowers, daisy-like flowers. Throughout the summer, sporadically, they'll throw out those big spikes with those blooms on them, but they're great for a little collection planting. So they kind of fold over top of the Buda edging, kind of like I like, how they do. And they're just a fun touch. I have them in several other places in the garden, but if you've got a spot that's kind of dark and filtered light, you can put a whole sea of these guys, and they're just perfect because they don't outgrow each other. They stay kind of nice. They grow kind of nice and even, fill each other's gaps. Very supportive of one another. A great grouped planting of the farfugiums. This is the odorata, so it is the perennial variety. This is a dark spot in the garden, so I went ahead and chose to put her here. She is trying to find a little bit of light. They'll bloom a beautiful collection of white flowers that kind of fold over each other. So almost like a little firework in the garden. So right on this corner, right around this boulder, I thought that might be a really good spot to touch. Now, I know I usually say don't put one plant anywhere, but this happened to be an unusual spot. So I needed something that was going to fold over and do a little bit of interest here. So a white begonia is great for filtered light and offering blooms. Down below, we have a sunny spot right here. These little girls are not open, unfortunately, but when they are, they're dynamic. They're the purslane, or some people call them portulaca. They're a beautiful, beautiful orange bloom that blooms nonstop all summer, all spring, into fall. During the winter, you might have to cut them back, but they'll flush back out in the spring. They're a gorgeous plant to work with. And then right here, I have a single bottle palm. This single bottle palm, because of the coconut palm and the triangle palms behind it, is leaning forward to find the sun, of course. It's looking for its spot. So I think that's charming, because when I walk underneath this space forever and ever, these two palms have been the roof line to this walkway, which I just think is so magical. I love that. I love that look. I love when I look down the walkway. These palms have always, even from a young age, as they started to lean out, have been the canopies lean over top. So it's almost like having an arbor in the garden. So I have those. But what became, and the first thing that I planted here were the triangle fan palms that you see behind us. We have 3 triangle fan palms, and it's amazing. I planted them all flat, but you can see how they've turned towards the sun, those angles. Triangle fan palms, if you're not familiar with them, they have a silvery green tone to the leaf, more silver than anything, which is fabulous because that really does give you a completely different contrasting look to the other palms. This one has 3 flat sides, so you're able to have a fan on one side, or you can turn it the other way, have a fan this way and a tail this way. Because of how they are, you can really position them the way that you want them to, unless you're like mine, which have decided just to do what they want to do because they're looking for a specific thing for themselves. But I love them. They are old and they are beautiful, and they are one of the first things that I would always see when I come out in the garden. Now that they're understory trees, the bottle palms, the spindle palms, you know, all the new palms that I've put in has started to grow up. It's funny how they're become now the backdrop to those trees, and the new landscaping is kind of coming in to take over, and that's what gardens do. I get this question often: how close can you plant palm trees to one another? And you can absolutely plant them as close as the fronds will allow you to plant them. If you're in good fertile soil, you can see that I've got a triangle fan palm right here, and then 2 bottle palms right next to it. And then I've got a triangle fan palm probably about 9 to 10 foot from the other one on the other side. So a centerpiece, and 9 to 10 foot that way, 9 to 10 foot that way, and then you've got trees that close together. And you'll see that I have right on that last end triangle palm, I've got that triple spindle palm. That triple spindle palm came in years and years and years later because it came in when the fronds were below this trunk line, and now it's starting to catch up and grow up the tree. But literally can put, I don't know if Bryce is able to capture that on camera, but we're like 3 foot off of that tree right there. So you can see that this tree is a big mamma jamma back there. It is not affected by its neighboring tree. You know, they're going to share the same root system. They're going to be very, very happy. They're going to be very strong. When I get a lot of clients who will ask me, we don't want anything too manicured. We want that jungle vibe. We want a tree here and a tree here and a tree here, and a little bit more hairy-carry, more organic. I get that, and I can landscape that way. However, I prefer to landscape where the trees have all structure. This is your anchor trees. These are your centerpiece trees. These are your smaller dwarf trees. You know, like there's like a systematic placement for those type of things. Then you could get all crazy and a little bit wild, kind of like I have here with all your underplanting trees, and it still makes sense. But if you have one tree outgrowing another tree and it's all wishy-washy, it has a tendency to really get away from you because you're like, gosh, I feel like there's just a lot going on back there, but nothing has more of that unanimous feel. Kind of want your wall to be your solid, your roof line to be nice and solid. Then get a little dicey with your plants if you want that jungle vibe, you know? And then even more so if you want that real clean line vibe. You can make a beautiful, thick, dense tree canopy and stagger things like this, and then do more of the same type of plant grouping that goes from one, and then another plant grouping that goes another way. That's very clean line. It doesn't have to be big leafed and jungle inspired. You can really, really play with it. But in both of those scenarios, it's always best to start out with a really well-designed tree installation first. And that's what a landscape designer does for you, or a landscape contractor will come in and they'll look at the whole space and say, okay, let's do the sense work first, then bring in the fun, bring in the party. Now look at this little Laquala. This little guy I brought in at a 3-gallon size, a teeny tiny little thing. And as you guys probably know, they're a bit pricey, these little trees. So you really have to find out where you want to use them. Tuck this bad boy right in here. He's getting very little airflow. He's really, really happy. And out of all of my Laqualas, and I have 4 of them, he's grown the fastest. He was like this. I put him in, I woke up the next day and I mean, literally, it was almost like that. It was amazing. He's outgrown the aglaonemas underneath. He's really, really happy in that particular spot. I cannot wait till he gets his 9-10 foot tall in this spot. It becomes the showstopper. He's also going to lean towards a little bit of the sun. So he's going to do what these trees are doing, which is leaning out this way, which is what I prefer and when I'm working with a flat garden. All right, so moving on to this palm tree. This is a Penanga coronata. This is a cool new palm species that I put in the ground. It's been in the ground maybe close to a year. It really taking off because they're supposed to be slow growers, but I think I've gotten a good 2 foot out of it, which is very unlikely, but I did use a really good backfill with soil on this one because I wanted to make sure it took off. Very, very upright, very compact. So it has individual trunks. I know it's probably hard to see, but it's almost like they bouquet right in the middle, and these fronds stay real close together and kind of do this, which is exactly what I wanted. I didn't have all the room in the world for fronds to get like this because I already got that going on. So I wanted something that was a contrasting leaf. And when you guys are looking for your plantings, don't be afraid to do that. If you've got one leaf that's big like the Laquala, then choose another leaf that's more linear, more arrow shaped. Just jazz it up with different fronds. It feels like, oh my gosh, there's a lot of different textures laying on top of one another, which is what makes it really cool and interesting. Botanical gardens, when they're designing for that space, and resorts do that to a T. You'll see them use different fronds on top of fronds, and it'll feel like there's a lot going on when there really isn't. So perfect for courtyard palms or a small planter along a wall. A lot of you guys will have those walled areas where you have like a 3-foot planter. Put this bad boy in there. They can handle that just fine. They do need a little bit of protection from the sun, so they kind of want morning sun environment into full shade. They can handle full shade. This is a cousin to the lipstick palm. The lipstick palm, of course, has that beautiful red stemming. I would kill for a lipstick palm. I mean, not really, because I'm a pacifist, but I would love to have a lipstick palm in my garden, but I'm a little bit worried about how cold we get. I mean, they're really, really cold sensitive, and I don't have many more room for pots out in my shade gardens. To the backside, again, filling her up with some aglaonemas, really giving her that leaf look, that light coloring. Anytime you have a dark spot and you can bring in light green or a light variegation in tone, it really shows off so much nicer. And then I have the large leaf Schiffelera. This is the dwarf variety, but it does mound out. So normal variegated Schiffelera is more hedge-like. This is softer, more flowy. It's not as hard stemmy. I really like it. Just have a little drift of those wrapping around the base of this tree. I think that'll be gorgeous at 4 or 5 foot tall. Once this tree gets a little bit bigger, it'll be my ground planting. This area gets more sun, so I needed something that could tolerate that. These guys can handle full sun, not as well as the variegated arvicola because that's a tougher plant, but this has a similar look to it, a bigger leaf, more floppier, but it can handle shade, filtered light, and full sun once it's adapted with a little bit of time. These are the pink pentas. They can handle some filtered light and some sun, will bloom in both spots, which is fabulous for those little guys. These guys look great for about 2 or 3 years. Then you really do need to cut the pentas back. So they're in that family line where they're a little bit longer lived. You're in your typical small flowering perennial, but I think they're worth it. And then if it's a small of a spot, you can always pull them out and replant 5 or 6 more. So moving on, we have the Cordyline grouping. So we had one at the very start on the other bottle palm. Now we've got it at the ending of this bottle palm, and it is just a collection of Cordylines. These guys, I cut back the tallest one every year. It flushes out with a new head every single year or 2. So I'm constantly getting new Cordylines, and I'm taking the old ones and putting them back in this sea of Cordyline collection. And then that's exactly what they do. I cut them, they keep growing and they produce more, and then I put them in there. So in 5 years, when we do this tour, you guys, we're gonna have like a sea of Cordylines, or I give them away all the time too. So this is a spot where I like it to get a little bit more organic. It's feeding over into the walkway right here, right over top of my edge line. So I feel like it's coming out into the walkway. And I'll do that often, especially in my designs, where I'll narrow a space just to kind of open it up later, to kind of give you not just curves in the garden, but to give you interest, to kind of give you a tightening up and then opening to, okay, now you're seeing it all, and then you're not seeing anything, and then you're seeing it all, and it's a whole experience. So that's what these guys do. So moving on, as we get further down, we get a little bit more light in this particular spot. So it really allowed me to open it up and use. Now I could have used something blooming here, but I love Crotons. I like that variegation and look, especially when I only have a very small section of the garden that I need almost like a wow factor. I need some punch. I need some impact. So I use the magnificent Crotons here for their variation in color. Now during the winter months, they get more burgundy tones to them with the yellow and the greens. During the summer months, they'll bleach out a little bit and get more of the yellow and the green tones. That's a fabulous kind of combination that they offer. Down below, you'll notice I'll have a red sister Cordyline that's popped out amongst the back side of the tree. It's kind of carried over, and then a ginger plant. And then over there to the back, we have another Queen Emma with a bedding of aglaonemas at the bottom. And that Rojo Congo that's climbing up the triangle palm, that's what I was meaning earlier when I said some of these plants will climb right up the tree. So it has grown with the tree. As the tree continues to grow, the Congo is growing up with it, which is so funny because it was originally in the direct shade. Now it's getting more and more sun as the tree continues to grow. So we'll see how that works out as it continues to get taller. We have a traveler's palm back there and an areca palm back there. there, as well as a coconut palm as our backdrop. So you can really see that we've got some good coverage at that back section of the garden. And that leads us to the Laquala palm. Now this Laquala palm is the biggest one I have in my whole garden. It's actually in the perfect spot. It gets a little bit of wind to the back section, but you can really see it's tucked into this berm, into this buffer. So it is almost like the little inset, little jewel in the garden. It is the thing that I see when I walk around this corner the most. I love these big paddle fronds. See, we've got a nice bedding of forest plants down below. Those are bird's nest ferns and rojo congos down at the bottom. And I love that, you guys, because I don't want to see mulch at the bottom. I don't want to remulch. I never remulch this area. My ground cover now is the ground forest. The ground floor is all planting. So that's exactly what happens. I did forget about my white lady here. I don't know how I forgot about her. She literally glows at night in the garden. I love her right here. I see her from my seeding section. She's absolutely stunning. It was a marketplace find. Just she's nestled in the forest plants here. One heart-shaped ficus to see how well it does in this type of lighting situation. It's doing fantastic. It's growing super, super slow. So if you get that collection, make sure that you have plenty of time for it to mature out. They're such a unique look in the garden. They can handle really deep shade and keep that white and green leaf. So if you need like a blast of something, don't do one like I did. Do make sure you do 8 or 9 and one collection, and that you're going to get that nice dollop of color. Then you can do some greens around it to really showcase that white and green of those guys. Speaking of showcasing, this dumb cane plant is fabulous right here. It has been such a stunner. It's getting a little bit too big for this spot. This is meant to be as a backdrop planting. I wanted to see if it could take more sun, and this is a spot that it seemed to really like. So I'm probably going to keep it here. Next year, I might relocate it. So far, it's done well. It's had a lot of water. It's had a little bit of water. I've had water 2 days a week, and it's had water 4 to 5 days a week, and it's done well in both situations. So very, very tough plant overall. Great for pots. They don't like full sun, so they like this kind of environment where they'll get a few hours of afternoon sun, and then that's that. Right here as our backdrop, these are old Mamma Jamma Europeans, the double European fan palm. I brought it in years ago. It has grown exceptionally slow, maybe 5-6 inches a year at most. I just love that it is a completely different texture of frond than every other frond that I have in the garden. Very weepy, very lacy, great movement. It's not very stiff in the garden. When we get storms, rains out here, and we sit out a lot when it's nice and breezy like that. It's like it's got loose hair flowing in the garden. It's just fabulous. So European fan palms I know get sometimes a bad rap of being just a very slow growing small tree, and that they are. It does take them a long time to get any size. That can be a pro, and it can be a con, but for me it can be a pro because it means it can fit in a tight spot for a very long period of time. I'm talking 20 years into a small space before it gets oversized for that particular area. They're also great because they're going to really protect what's underneath of it. Like these Lady Claire Crotons, they do not like full sun, but you can see the ones that get more sun have that brighter tone in leaf color. The ones to the back that are down there filling up the bottom base of that European fan palm have the darker green leaf and a little speckled bit of color. And then during the winter, that yellow turns more white. So you get that white and green back here, which is exactly what I'm looking for when I have a big balance of something like this, where I have the burl marks, where these burl marks just drape over this edge. I just think that it's just such a little masterpiece when I'm looking down the garden like this. Having them kind of flow over is just so super stunning. Put them in a little collection, like a little swath. Now you can pretty much draw with these guys. You can curve them this way in a garden. You can just do a little collection of maybe 5 or 6, kind of framing something. They're great for that. This shiny kind of arrowhead leaf is such a slow growing plant. It will, if you have time and you train it up a tree, if you like that kind of look where it'll go straight up a tree, it absolutely will. However, it won't naturally want to do that unless it's incredibly old. So it's just one of those things. You'll have to train it if you want it to do that. But I do like them here like a skirt planting because you can easily keep them around this 2-foot height to 3-foot height. And then I have one Carpoxylon palm right here. I squeezed him in here. It had no sense of being in this particular spot, but there was one left at the nursery, and so I wanted one more and popped him in here. So he is fighting off some of the other trees, but definitely a tree that I love so much I wanted to find a spot for. Right here we have a double trunked hurricane palm, and I'm sure you guys by now can guess why I put him on the corner, just like the other double bottle palm. Just because these fronds are going to hang over here as I sit here in my chair, have my coffee. This is just such a great spot. This is the shady spot in the garden. This is the coolest spot in the garden. We get this breeze that comes this way. And I know that people are like, do you ever sit there? I can promise you, I sit here, my husband sits here, I'm working out in the garden. This is the place that I sit to collect my thoughts or find whatever podcast I want to listen to on my phone before I get started back out in the garden. I thought, honestly, I would only sit here when this variegated jasmine behind me would go into bloom, but I find myself sitting here even in the hottest times of the year. So I think that when that goes into bloom, it's going to be just a bonus. I'll just be getting that great fragrance. And just like I mentioned with the gardenia, anytime that you have a seeding section, if you can pop something in there that's going to give you that fragrance, dial up your senses, it's almost like you've transported yourself out of a suburban yard, out of a neighborhood, out of busy lawn mowers and all the things that go on, pool guys and all that stuff that are popping around your neighborhood, but into your own private resort, something that you've been a part of creating, something you've been a part of maintaining, something that you've seen kind of unfold and grow up. That's the magic of gardening. And that's the bug that is scary to get. So be careful, because it's just the beginning. And if this is your vibe, if this is your thing, then you guys, I am so proud. I'm like a proud mom. Bryce did a video that kind of shares with you guys how to set up a backyard garden space. It's pretty much a how-to. The way he does it on his computer program, he kind of shows how to create a private backyard. I will link that video down below. For you true gardeners, if you wouldn't mind sharing the love and checking out my son's video, that would be super, super cool. Thank you so much. I will see you guys next weekend.